So there was this moment where I'll never forget the year it happened. We did not go to Chuck E. Cheese for my birthday that year. We went to like this nice restaurant. And that year I graduated and moved to the grown-ups table where no one had to cut my turkey for me, and I got to get as much mashed potatoes as I wanted. I felt like I have made it. I'm at the big kids table, and I remember that moment clear in my brain because I didn't know, am I a grown-up? Am I an adult? I still want to go to Chuck E. Cheese, if I'm honest, and what's happening in this awkward moment? Today, we get to talk about kids and parents, and we're going to talk about the ideal while there's grace for the real. Can I just say this? There are no perfect parents and no perfect kids, but we have this passage that's going to give us a little bit of direction as to what it looks like to mutually submit to one another, what a spirit-filled, gospel-centered relationship, just like marriage that we talked about last week, and we'll talk again next week. These are all kind of these mutually submissive kind of relationships, but there's something unique about parents and kids that we need to understand today. And off of Thanksgiving dinner, I don't know how well it went or not, but we get to talk about parents and kids today. So we're in Ephesians chapter 6. You just heard the passage read. Guys did such a great job. They prayed. So let's kind of dive right in. There are 2 points we're going to say today. There are 2 natural breaks in our passage, only 4 verses today. The first speak to kids and the second speaks to parents. So the first point is this: children, look to the Lord. Children are to look to the Lord. Let's go back to our passage. It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with the promise that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land. So when we talk about children looking to the Lord, even with imperfect parents at times, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, this speaks to both hands and heart. It speaks to both actions and attitudes. So, kids in the room, old or young, under the roof or out from under the roof, what does it look like in our actions and in our attitudes, with our hands and with our hearts, to look to the Lord in this relationship? In our actions, it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. I thought about this, what does this mean? And looked it up and talked to a lot of people smarter than me. And there is this imagery here of this word for obey, which literally could mean when someone knocks on the door, you get up to see and listen to who it is. So just imagine this conversation now. You're sitting down, someone knocks at the door, and you're dismissive of that, or you decide to get up and go to the door and see who it is and listen. Hey, who is that? So when it says children obey, it doesn't mean to be dismissive, but to rise up and be attentive to, I'm going to go answer the door when mom and dad come knocking. I want to listen and obey and understand what my parents are saying. It's reminding me a lot of Proverbs. In fact, the book of Proverbs is, son, I'm begging you, listen to my wisdom. Notice what it says in Proverbs chapter 1. This is how the book begins. Hear, my son, your father's instruction. I want you to listen. Get up and answer the door. And do not forsake your mother's teaching. This is a parental thing. When mom and dad are speaking, I need you to listen. Why? They are graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. It's beneficial to you. There's something about listening, getting up and answering the door, obeying what mom and dad are saying. When I do so, it's like a graceful garland for my head and pendants around my neck. Colossians chapter 3, a parallel passage to this, verse 20 and 21, when Paul says it to the church in Colossae, he says this: children, obey your parents in everything. Can I just highlight in everything to my two children sitting right over here? I just want to highlight that. In the Greek, it means everything is what that means. Obey your parents in the Lord. Why? This pleases the Lord. It's obeying your parents in the Lord. There might be some things I do that don't need to be followed or obeyed. There might be some things that I would say in anger or in sin. But there's something about your connection to the Lord when it says, when you do this in the Lord, in Ephesians chapter 6, this is right. When you obey your parents in the Lord, this is right. When the door knocks, you want to respond, not be dismissive of. I want to do and obey. This is right. You say, what do you mean it's right? Well, he explains it. Because then he says, your attitude matters. Not just your actions, but the why now. Just like he did with husbands and wives. It was husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wives, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. It wasn't necessarily just the what, but the why behind it. I want to do this to honor the Lord. What it says is honor your father and mother. Now it talks about attitude. I want to, because my heart is in the right place. This is the first commandment with the promise that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land. When it says honor, that word means to estimate and fix a value. What that means is, to what my parents want to say to me, I estimate, I fix a value on that, okay? When I don't honor, I have estimated and fixed a value on that that's not valuable to me. I don't want that. And what Paul is saying is, no, listen, when your parents speak, I need you to fix a value on that's important. That honors them when you fix a value on the wisdom that they're trying to give to you. I want to, in my heart, fix a value on that. I'll say it this way. There's a lot of us in the room today that you're not under the roof of your mom and dad anymore. Some of you are married. How many married people in the room? Raise your hand. Oh, that's a lot. All right, so you're like, this doesn't apply to me. Hold on, time out. I remember having this conversation in premarital counseling. They would say, well, it says leave your father and mother and cleave to your spouse, right? The two become one flesh. And sometimes in weddings and even in marriages, we have this faulty logic that it's the blending of two families together. When that's not what's taking place. It's not the blending of two, it's the beginning of new. There's now a third unit, a family, Jesse and I. There were the Dowds, there were the Flights, and they came together. No, a third unit got created, Chris and Jesse. And so now I'm supposed to leave and cleave. No, listen. Leave and cleave doesn't mean abandon mom and dad. What that means is now I prefer her over. She is now first in priority to me. But it doesn't mean I get to dishonor and disrespect. Now the question is, how do I continue to honor my mother and father? How do I continue to honor my in-laws while prioritizing my new family unit of my wife? Does that make sense? So all of us in the room, you don't get to turn off, as Umwame said, don't turn this point off. I'm not a kid anymore. Now listen to me, if you still have parents, what does honoring them look like today? What does it mean to fix value to what they have to say? Now, Jesse and I are going to pray through it and make decisions on our own, but I value your opinion on this decision that we are about to make. Does that make sense? Same thing takes place as you're still in the house. You're trying to grow up, be a young man, you're trying to grow up, be a young woman, and your parents want to instill wisdom into you, and we need you to value that as we're trying to help you make decisions in life. Matthew 15, verse 8 says this people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. I was really good at this growing up. My dad would come to me with all kinds of wisdom. The value I estimated upon that was 0. And so my automatic response is, yeah, Dad, I know, yeah, whatever. You honor me with your lips, but your heart is far from me. You're not listening. Yeah, Dad, whatever, yep, yeah, Dad, I know. If you knew, then why did you do that? Well, I know, yep, You honor me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. This is a heart check for all of us in the room. In my actions, do I desire to be obedient? Do I desire to honor, to esteem value to my parents? 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17 says this, just as a reminder, honor everyone. Just in case you thought you got a pass. This idea of honoring people is a universal principle. Honor everyone. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. It is out of my fear and honor and respect and reverence and awe for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords that it is my heart's desire to show honor to everybody. I don't want to dishonor. It even says honor the emperor. Ooh, that's a toughie. You say, man, what do I do when it's, listen, out of my fear and reverence and awe for the Lord? It is my heart's desire to honor everyone, especially my mom and my dad. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. This is right. Honor your father and mother. Why? That it might go well with you and you may live long in the land. There's a quality and a quantity of life that takes place in this moment. Now, this was given during the 10 Commandments. This is the commandment. It came with the promise to Israel that you might dwell and live long in the land that I'm leading you into. And can I say this right now? Boys, you will live longer if you listen to what I got to say to you right now. Your quality and quantity of life is extended when you listen to me. Now, we talk about this. I remember, Schraders are here. Molly and McKinley is here somewhere. I saw Molly. There was a day when we all went camping. And this time of year in the fall reminds me, there, McKinley, that we would all be at Jellystone up a Natural Bridge and going camping together. Now we'd go up there and we'd go camping, and during October, every weekend, they do like a trunk or treat all over the campground. And so you dress up, they do a costume competition. Even our dogs had costumes on them. Poor Velvet, she was so embarrassed. So the moment happened and then you dress up and then you go around to all the campers and everybody's just chucking candy. Like you could literally fill up like a pillow, like you could fill up a big old bucket of candy because people are just throwing candy at kids. This particular year, we were dressed up as Dow Dynasty. So I want you to take a look at this. Go to this. There we go. There we are. Dow Dynasty showing up. You remember this? My old Jayco J Feather. Oh, Stephen, man, that was some good times. That's when we had graduated to big boy camping. We had a kitchen and a toilet in our camper, a hard shell. Like it was big time. So this is us as Dow Dynasty, me and the boys and Miss Jessie. And this was the deal. How many of you remember, if you're going to go around and get candy, at some point there's going to be a dad tax, right? I'm dressed up. I got the beard on, right? I'm putting in work. So here's the deal. You're going to go around, you're going to get your candy. And when we get to the end, here's what's going to happen. Daddy's going to come asking for a little something. So we get done. I look at the boys. I'm like, all right, boys. Anybody got some Reese cups up in there? Because Daddy could go for a Reese cup right now because I know s'mores is coming. And I know Miss Jill is about to put it down on what it looks like to put a s'more together. If you haven't made a s'more with a Reese cup, whoa, come on now. That'll change your life. If that's the only wisdom you get from this message, you're welcome. Let's pray. Let's go home. S'mores with the Reese cup, next level, right? So I'm looking for some Reese cups. My boys start digging through the bounty of the haul, and they start giving me like the Smarties, you know, and like the sugar daddies that break your, I'm like, no, listen, no. Hey, no, I asked for a Reese cup. What's the problem? Oh yeah, Dad, we don't got any. I'm like, you don't. I'm not a rich man. I could literally right now go to Walmart and buy a lot of Reese cups, all right? I'm asking you to reach in your bounty and give me one Reese cup so Daddy can have a s'more that he's been really excited about all day long. You can choose to honor this request And so we have this battle over, I have given you so much, I'm just asking for this. Isn't this amazing how it works with us and God, isn't it? I have given you, and I have the ability to give you so much more. I have the ability. I'm asking for you to honor your mom and your dad. I'm asking you to obey your parents in the Lord. That's what I'm asking from you. And if you'll do so, it will go well with you. Listen, because it's right. Why should I? Because it's right. Who says so? God. Here's what I know. Blessings follow obedience. And God says, I can't bless disobedience. Hosea chapter 14, verse 9 says it this way. Whoever is wise, let him understand these things. Whoever is discerning, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right. The upright walk in them. Transgressors stumble in them. The ways of the Lord are right. And he says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. Why? This is right. Honor your parents, and it will go well with you. Children, look to the Lord. Parents are going to get it wrong. I get it wrong all the time. Look to the Lord and do what's right by what he has said. Secondly, parents. Here we go. Parents point to the Lord. Children, look to the Lord. Parents, point to the Lord. This passage is about doing it in and for and to the Lord. It says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. And by fathers, by implication, it is parents, fathers, and mothers. You take into context husbands and wives and then step into this. And this word, you can understand this to be mom and dad, parents together. Do not provoke your children to anger. This is where it's going to get countercultural for us. Just like last week, the countercultural piece wasn't that wives would be submissive to their husbands. That was widely accepted and expected in that culture. The countercultural moment last week was that husbands would actually love their wives like Christ loved the church sacrificially. That was outside of the norm. Our norms today are different, which is why Umwami did a great job talking about culture shouldn't define what marriage is for us. Bible gets to do that. Same thing here. Culture doesn't get defined how we parent. This Bible does. God says so. It's right. What it says is, parents, you should not provoke your children to anger. And this word, fathers, this was challenged back in this day. This would be very countercultural to not provoke your children to anger. A father's love back in this culture would have been extremely hard to imagine. There is a Roman law called patria potestas. And in this, a father had virtual life and death power over everyone in his household. He could literally cast them out of the house, sell them as slaves, or even kill them. He was accountable to no one. It's patria potestas. A newborn child was placed at the father's feet to determine its fate. If the father picked it up, the child was allowed to stay at home. If the father walked away, the child was disposed of. This was the culture. In a letter written in 1 BC by a man to his wife, he wrote this, heartiest greetings. I love that. That's as endearing as you can get, right? Note that we are still even now in Alexandria. Do not worry if when all others return, I remain in Alexandria. I beg and beseech you to take care of the little child, and as soon as we receive wages, I will send them to you. If, good luck to you, you have another child, I love that. If, and best of luck to you, really, honestly, you have another child, if it is a boy, let it live. If it is a girl, expose it. Another guy in Rome at the time of Paul, when he wrote this letter, said this, we slaughter a fierce ox, we strangle a mad dog, we plunge a knife into a sick cow. Children born weak or deformed, we drown. That was culture. We can speak a lot to how we're treating our unborn and our children today. Not a lot has changed. But I want to live by what God has said. And what he says is very countercultural then, and it might be countercultural to you today. Moms and dads, don't provoke your children to wrath. Let's not prod and poke. Colossians 3:21, our parallel passage says this: do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. You have the ability, moms and dads, to pour into your children and build them up or to tear them down. And what it's saying is, stop doing what might be culturally acceptable today, and let's be countercultural, and instead, you should be defending them. Instead of coming at them, you should be defending them. Defend your kids. Do not provoke your children to anger. Don't poke the bear. We're to defend and protect our children. The same thing as today. This is why we're fighting these battles all the time today. There was a battle going on then, and Paul stood up and said, listen to me, protect, defend your children. And instead, develop them. Not only defend them, but develop them. But instead of provoking them to anger or wrath, build them up. Instead of tearing them down, build them up. Develop them. This word build them up, this word for build, is to nourish and to nurture. It's the exact opposite. Don't provoke, build up, nourish and nurture. Don't tear them down, build them up. And I'm asking you, moms and dads, to work at building your children up, not tearing them down. And our words can be hurtful. It says, moms and dads, defend them, develop them, bring them up, and direct them in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, this is the one. Build them up, develop them, but how do I do that? By directing them, by parents pointing to the Lord in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Can I remind you of something, moms and dads, today? Our task is to raise adults, not raise children. Our job is to raise them up so they can be sent out into this world and make a difference and an impact for the globe. We're trying to raise up young men and young women in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. I'm trying to point them to follow Jesus wherever Jesus might lead them. Not where I or their mama want them to go, but where Jesus wants them to go. The question is, who are you pointing to? Have you had a conversation about Jesus? I want to bring you up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And the very first step in that is this. Do you know that Jesus came and lived a life that you and I could not? He lived a perfect life, not like your mom or your dad. We are not perfect. Son, daughter, I get it wrong all the time. Jesus lived a life, God in the flesh, and they crucified him. He suffered, bled, and died in our place. He took our position. He was our substitute. He paid the price that we all owed and deserved. But he didn't stay dead. 3 days later, God rose him from the grave, signifying that payment is acceptable to a holy God on our behalf. And if by faith alone, in Christ alone, you surrender your good, your bad, your ugly, your past, your present, your future, you give it all to Jesus, listen to me. He'll rescue you, he'll save you, he'll redeem you. And we get to walk in the freedom that we have in Christ. Son, daughter, it's the most important conversation I can ever have with you. Why? Because I want to bring you up in the instruction and discipline of the Lord. I want you to look like Jesus more than I want you to look like me. You say, preach a little bit about instruction and discipline. Let's get it right. Of the Lord. It's this book open and conversations about what God would say to you. I've got 2 boys. And I'm going to bring them up on the stage right now. This could be the last time I ever preach, depending on how they handle this moment. But we're going to risk it. We're going to do risky for the biscuit here. Here we go. I'm bringing my boys up. This is my son, Andrew, and Jonathan. Y'all give it up for my boys, Andrew and Jonathan. Andrew. All right. So we're going to have a little conversation about these three things. I don't know how this is going to go. We'll be fine. So, boys, this is Andrew. This is Jonathan. I don't know who they look more like as they get older. People say that all the time. We're trying to help them look like Jesus, right? That's the idea. So, I probably have some really important questions to ask you. I got a couple. Number one, first and foremost, probably to Jonathan. You've played a lot of soccer in your life. Who's the best soccer player in our house right now?
Me.
Oh, Jonathan Dow. Did you not honor your father and mother? All right, give the microphone back to Andrew. You're done. All right, we're done. Done with that. That's debatable. We'll see. Let me ask you some questions, boys, about these three things. We talked about how your mom and I have the responsibility to defend you, develop you, and direct you, to not provoke you to wrath. But I'm sure we have done things that have provoked you to not be happy with us. So, Andrew, growing up, man, what is something that used to drive you crazy about your mom and I?
We have a long week of school, working hard, getting up early in the mornings, and every week you look forward to the weekend so you can chill, relax, play Fortnite, whatever. But then those Saturday mornings when we wake up and we have to trim the bushes.
Right.
And somehow we never end up trimming the bushes. We end up cleaning the bush trimmings.
That's right.
That was the thing for me.
So you didn't like doing bush trimming on the weekends?
No.
And the fact that I got to do all the power tools?
Just felt a little unfair.
A little unfair. That's fair. That's fair. That's valid. All right, fine. Let's ask Jonathan, same question. What did we do that drove you crazy?
Mine was probably when Mondays were, everyone knows Mondays are Mondays. And then we would get off the bus, and Mom would just be like, hey, we're going to go to Tramlaw, or as she would say, the magical, mystical world of Tramlaw, which for a little bit was very convincing and was exciting. I was like, let's go. I want to know what Tramlaw is.
Yes.
But it's just Walmart backwards. So every Monday after school, we would go to Walmart. And
the magical, mystical world of Tramlaw.
Yeah. We would go there. And I hated it because every single aisle was searched for something. I don't know.
That's
anything.
Exactly right.
So,
that's exactly right. You can go for milk and leave with 50 things. All right. So the magical, mystical world of Tramlaw and bushes. Fair. That's valid. We'll take it, babe. We can take our medicine there. We're also supposed to develop you and bring you up. So that means we're supposed to give little nuggets of wisdom, that you are to answer the door when we knock and listen. So nuggets of wisdom from mom and dad over the years that have stuck.
I think one of the biggest ones for me, just like growing up and going to my friend's house or going to like sleepovers and stuff like that, every time before we left, my dad would say, hey, remember voices and choices, as in make sure the voices you're listening to are edifying and the choices you make are smart. Obviously, I made dumb decisions, but he tried, so it was good.
That's it. Voices and choices. Yep, I remember that a lot. Boys still say that.
Mm-hmm. Mine is, well, most of you guys know, as he said, I play soccer and other sports. But so mom and dad always said, Dows don't quit. And growing up, I always thought that was just like, finish the play strong, finish the season strong. If it's a tough season, you don't always want to finish it. And so he was just like, Dows don't quit, finish strong. But then, like, whenever I look back on it, he said it, or him and mom said it more than just during, like, before a game or during a game. it was every day, and it was like some weeks are hard, like at school. I don't enjoy school, and so just like not quitting and making sure I do it fully, because Colossians 3:23 says, "Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord, not unto men." And so everything that I was doing, I wouldn't quit because it was for the glory of God and not for me.
Amen. Whew, that's good. Thanks, buddy.
I didn't bring any verses, so he went up to me there.
So we're also supposed to bring you up in the instruction and discipline of the Lord. It's supposed to point to Jesus. So your mom and I have tried our best to do that. What's something that kind of helped you guys in your walk with Christ?
So probably one of the most influential things in my life, especially in like my formative years of like middle school and high school, every Sunday morning before church, me and Dad would go to McDonald's and just have breakfast before church, and have that accountability every week. He'd ask me every week, "How'd you do?" So just like that mental thing of like, I'm gonna have to check up with him on Sunday. I gotta keep control of my temptation. And then also just like diving into the Word and learning how to be a man of God and growing in that. So that was probably the best thing for me, just growing up.
Amen.
I didn't have like a specific like saying or anything, but I think one thing that they did really well was influencing God and not really forcing it, because I think a lot of people think you're a pastor's kid, your parents are like, they're strict about the Bible, and they're like, hey, if you don't read the Bible, like not literally, but like you can't eat, but like, but that's not really how it is in our house. They every single day, they influence it, and they try to guide you in what decisions I made. But I think I really like not forcing it, because they know it's my decision, not their decision. And so I know it's hard sometimes, but the way that they made sure we didn't, they definitely didn't make sure we made any really bad decisions, but they didn't force it.
That's good. I love these boys. Let me pray for them. God, thank you so very, very much for today. Thank you for our boys. God, thank you for the privilege that Jesse and I have had to do our best, God, to not provoke them to anger, but to bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So, God, I pray for them, for Andrew as he goes back to ministry at camp this week, for Jonathan as he finishes up strong this year of his senior year of high school, and God, whatever you have for them next, God, we just want to trust you with it. And so, God, we give all this to you. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's hear from my boys. I said from the beginning, this is the ideal, but there's grace for the real. There's no perfect parents, no perfect kids. But man, we have a perfect word that we get to look at. So I'm going to invite the worship team, our music team, to come up and join me back up here on stage. And I want to bring this and point back at you and I. Go back to Thanksgiving. Go back to the kids' table at Thanksgiving. Is it your desire that they stay at the kids' table or that they make it to the grown-ups' table? Is it your desire to leave the kids' table and sit at the big table and cut your own turkey? 1 Corinthians 13 says things like, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I spoke as a child, I reasoned as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Children look to the Lord. Parents point to the Lord. Whether as a parent or as a child, we want to walk with honor. So my question for you today is, where are you at? At what table are you sitting? The goal of a parent is to point their kids to Jesus. The goal of this pastor today is to point you to Jesus. So if you're here today and you've never made a commitment to Jesus, when we share things like the gospel was shared this morning, when we talk about death, burial, and resurrection, we talk about faith and trust and surrender. We talk about lordship of Christ, and you're going, man, those are foreign concepts to me. I've heard them, I think I'm familiar with them, but I've never personally surrendered. Listen to me, there's nothing else that I could do better today than to point you to Jesus. Just like Jesse and I are trying to point our boys there, I'm trying to point all of you there. And in just a moment, if you want to have a conversation with somebody about that, man, we would love to point you to Jesus. There'll be people here on the side. You can come here. We'd love to have that conversation. To kids in the room, young, old, voices and choices. Voices and choices. What voices have you listened to this week? Be honest. What choices have you made? Choices have consequences. Maybe some of the awkwardness at the Thanksgiving table was a result of voices and choices. You know, you can come to Jesus. Can I point you to Jesus? To have a conversation with him about those things, about your actions and your attitudes towards him and towards others. Maybe some of you need to not come to a side or to the front. Maybe you need to grab your phone and call your mom and your dad. Maybe you need to send them a text and just say, hey, maybe your response this morning is a text saying, hey, mom and dad, can we talk later today? I don't know what you could do to speak into some reconciliation, but maybe God will lay that on your heart today. Parents, our task is to defend, develop, and direct our kids to Jesus. We're not perfect. You can say, well, it's been a struggle. Well, they can start new today. Today can be the day when you go, you know what? I'm going to have a conversation about Jesus with my kids. I don't know how God would direct you in this moment. Maybe your kids are here with you today and you want to take them by the hand and start leading them now. Maybe you want to pray with them. You don't need to come to somebody. You lead. Pray with your kids. This is a moment that I want to give to you and ask you those questions. Do you need someone to help point you to Jesus? You come find us. We'd love to talk with you. Do you need to talk to God about some voices and choices, your actions and your attitudes? Have a conversation. Parents, do you need to defend, develop, direct, point your kids to Jesus? Whatever God will lay on your heart to do, we want to give you time to do just that. Let me pray for you.